Howdy, it's Kyle, taking a look at some soon-to-be ghost towns in the US. Normally, when we think about ghost towns, they're places that were abandoned at least 100 years ago, like some of those Old West ghost towns that we can visit, and there are people in period costumes that can show you what the town was like when it was abandoned. But there are still towns to this day that are losing so much population that they might become abandoned and become ghost towns in the next couple of decades or so. Maybe these were just a one company town, the company closed down, maybe it was a paper mill that shut down, or maybe it was a mining town and the mine just stopped producing after a while. So there are plenty of reasons why a town might have continuously losing population. So I want to look at a handful of ones here that have had population losing for a long time and might very well become a ghost town in the next 20 or 30 years. I sometimes jokingly refer to towns like this as a great place to start a cult or to move your cult, because most of the abandoned homes, it's been abandoned recently, so the houses are still in pretty good shape, foundations are okay, no wood rot, the doors and windows might be busted out and boarded up, but they're still, okay. Hooked up to utilities, roads are already there, and because none of these towns are ghost towns yet, there are people running the town, community services, so you can slowly ease in with your cult. Just slowly kind of build up a trust with the community before you bring them all in, take over the population, take over the votes, take over the city council, and make the town a cult town. So, I joke like that, but these are towns that have a lot of recent abandonment. So if you want to start a new life with a cult, check out some of these towns. I'm going to start with Tryon, Nebraska. It's located just west of the geographic center of the state. There are about 100 people left in this town, with about a 1/3 population lost since 2010. But you look at the historical population, there were a lot of people that moved there between 2000 and 2010, but then most of those people that moved there have since left. It's located within McPherson County. The entire county itself has under 400 people. And just like the town, the population has dropped a lot since 2010. And this is located in no man's land, Nebraska. You can see to the east is where you have some more fertile soil with agricultural land, a lot of corn being grown there. To the west is where you get to some of the badlands and some of the more subtle beauty of western Nebraska. But right around in this part of the state, there's not a lot of people, and the few that are leaving. And it's not just Tryon and McPherson counties, but all of the other surrounding counties have populations in the hundreds and are losing people. This is located in the Sandhills portion of the state, where you have a lot of cattle grazing, but not a whole lot right here in McPherson County. The main highway going through the town is the only paved road in the entire county. And this is the only town in the entire county, so if you were to take your cult to this town, you could take over the entire county. Now heading to the Texas Panhandle, I'm going to the town of Guthrie. There are about 150 people in the town, and the entire county has only about 210 people. And just like every other town I'll be mentioning in this video, it is losing population. Despite all of the population growth in eastern Texas, about 1/3 of the counties in the state are losing population. Most of those are in the western half of the state. In the southeast part of the Panhandle, this is not where you have oil or natural gas. This is not big cattle grazing area. This is not big agricultural crop growing area. This is not beautiful scenery for tourism. And you're 95 miles to Lubbock, 175 miles to Amarillo, and 200 miles to Fort Worth. And just to add insult to it, the South Wichita River going through town is intermittent. Usually there's no water in it. And this part of the country was the epicenter for the Dust Bowl in the 1930s. Look at the population of this county in 1930, almost 1,200, and it's been losing population since. And just like Tryon, Nebraska, and McPherson County, Guthrie, Texas, and King County is the only town in the county. So take your cult here and have an entire county to yourself. Now I'm headed to New England and the town of Princeton, Maine. There are about 700 people left in the town. There were about 900 in 2000. And this is located in the rural eastern part of the state, not along I-95 and not along the Canadian border either. It's about 20 miles to the twin border towns of Calais, Maine and St. Stephen, New Brunswick, but not really close enough to be affected by the border business going on there. It's on a nice lake. There's a small Indian reservation there, some beautiful scenery, and it's not that far from the coast. And I love this house here. They built some crappy trailer type thing in front of the beautiful old house behind it that was abandoned. And there are many other towns in this region that could be on this list. There are plenty of others that have populations in the hundreds that are losing people. But with this one having some really nice scenery, being really close to the border, it's a great place for your cult to move to, especially if you're smuggling cigarettes on model trains. So move your cult and start spreading the joy of needful things in Princeton, Maine. Next, I'm going to the extremely remote northeastern corner of Oregon and the ghost town to be of Flora. This town was founded in 1897 and according to the Wikipedia page is already considered a ghost town. It was apparently completely abandoned by the 1990s, but by going around on Google Street View, you can see a couple of houses are clearly still lived in. Some of the oldest abandoned homes have an RV right next to it. Do people live in some of these RVs because the homes are condemned? So with a few of the homes being apparently occupied, probably a couple of these RVs are lived in. I would say maybe 10 to 20 people live in this town. But of all of the ones on the list, this one is the most likely one of these to become a state park or one that's preserved to keep some of these old homes. Right now, the old Flora School is part of the National Register of Historic Places, but right now the rest of the town does not. But because it's so much out in the middle of nowhere, there can't be that much demand to make this a state park. There's just nobody near here. This is beautiful territory near the Tri-State Point with Idaho and Washington, one of the most desolate parts of the country. So you can take your cult to the town of Flora, take it over, have some beautiful scenery out there in the middle of absolute nowhere to do whatever you want with your cult. From the northwest to the southeast, I'm going to Greeleyville, South Carolina. There are about 350 people left in this town. It's been declining population since the 80s. It's located in Williamsburg County, which is a large county in the state for area, but very rural and very poor. Downtown Greeleyville already looks like a ghost town. There really aren't any businesses that are open. But one thing interesting about this town is that many of the homes that are there are actually pretty nice. So even though many of the older homes and some of the trailers are being abandoned, people are moving to Myrtle Beach or Charleston or wherever, some of the nicer homes there are still pretty nice, but they're not really in a town much anymore. So it's becoming more of a cluster of homes regardless of how nice they are, but not really much of a town there that doesn't have a business district. And this is relatively common in parts of the southeast between the cities of the Piedmont and the coastal areas. So you think about the south, most of the big cities are either in the Piedmont, so Richmond, Raleigh, Greensboro, Charlotte, Columbia, Atlanta, or they're along the coast, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Wilmington, Myrtle Beach, Charleston, Savannah. But those coastal lowlands between the two are often really rural, really poor, and losing population. And Greeleyville is just one of those, but I thought it was worth mentioning because many of the homes that are left are, again, pretty nice. But there's no downtown, so your cult can go there, put some businesses there, and get some of those folks in a nice house to come spend their money. Going one state over to Georgia, I'm going to the dying town of Stillmore. And this is similar to Greeleyville, South Carolina, located in that part of the state between the Piedmont and the coast. But I wanted to mention this one for a couple of different reasons. One, unlike all of the other towns I'm mentioning in this video, there was a lot of population growth in this town between 1960 and 2000. But for whatever reason, something happened in the past 20 years and the population has plummeted. There's still about 400 people there, which is a pretty big town, but it is going down quite a bit. But also why that's interesting is it's located in Emmanuel County, which is gaining population. So maybe there are people abandoning some of these older homes and trailers and Stillmore and just moving to the county seat of Swainsboro. And this is a part of the state that I'm pretty familiar with. I go down there to go paddling quite a bit at a state park. And this part of the state is when you start getting into some swampy territory. About an hour drive south of here is the Okefenokee Swamp. And I just recently drove through this town earlier this week, and it really already seemed like a ghost town. It was the middle of the day, but there was no activity anywhere. Okay, now going to a different part of the South, I'm going to Friars Point, Mississippi, in the northwest part of the state. This is located right along the Mississippi River on the state line with Arkansas in the part of the state referred to as the Delta, even though it isn't geologically the Delta. A geographic oddity about this is that it's located on an oxbow of the river, so you can actually cross into Arkansas from Mississippi without crossing over the river. This town had about 1,400 people in 2000 and has 800 today, so a big drop, although 800 is a huge town for this list. And this one was interesting because there's a lot of recent abandonment here. Some of the downtown shops looked recently closed. The antique store still had merchandise inside. And just like Stillmore, this town already felt kind of like a ghost town that was really quiet on a weekday. Friars Point is located in Coahoma County, and the county seat is Clarksdale, and even there has seen a big 1/3 population drop just this century. And this one's a lot like Greeleyville in South Carolina and Stillmore, Georgia, in that there is a downtown, but the downtown's pretty much abandoned, and all the homes left over are basically just a cluster of homes with no real business district. It's located right along Mississippi State Highway 1, which is the Great River Road, and there's also a levee road that follows the river. And although driving through this part of the state can be a bit depressing with all of the abandonment, this is the best part of the country to get great food at gas stations. So if you're looking to take over a town that already has a cute little block of Main Street type businesses that are abandoned, as well as having a nice old church you can use for all of your evil cult ceremonies, then check out Friars Point, Mississippi. Okay, now I'm going to California and a town that I mentioned in a recent video about obscure towns on obscure lakes, and that's the town of Spalding. It's located along Eagle Lake and Enduraic Lake in the northeast part of the state, and this part of California is very desolate. The population of this town is about 200, but it's only an estimate. So why am I including a town that wasn't even in existence before 2000 on a list about soon-to-be ghost towns? Well, it's because they had big plans for this town, but they never came to fruition. I'm not exactly sure what the full-fledged plan was going to be, but look at the street grid they laid out. They laid out a perfect grid pattern, picked as many different tree names they can come up with. They named the street that goes along the lake the Strand. Google Street View hasn't been there since '07, but look at these '07 shots. They were building all over this little town. There was construction everywhere, including some houses that were completed, and people were living there. And check out this parking lot for the boat launch. This is big enough to host a bass fishing tournament. You could have 100 trucks that are pulling through with their boats. And there's even an airstrip there. And sure, it's just this, but they went through the process of getting FAA clearance and a permit. So they clearly had some big plans for this town. But the 2008 housing crash, and this place really suffered. They were trying to sell lots, build this thing up, and it just wasn't working out. And then there was a big wildfire in 2018, and even though none of the houses in town were burned, many folks were scared off and moved away. And since then, this little planned town has been in freefall. But I'm just really curious as to why they were trying to build up this town in the first place. This is the middle of absolute nowhere in high deserts. This lake is enduraic, so it can dry up, but this isn't exactly California postcard scenery. And if you're looking to get away from people, you're not going to move to a community where they're building all these houses that has a big old boat launch and an airport. So shocking surprise, most of the town is pretty empty and was never built and developed, so it's almost like a small-scale version of California City, that big failed place out in the desert. And as it stands now, nobody's moving in, but there are a handful of for sale signs. I mean, heck, where can you get lakefront property anywhere in the US for $250? And isn't this just the most beautiful lake you can possibly imagine having your house on? But this is where your cult can come in. Swoop on in. They already have the roads paved. They already have the boat launch. They already have the airport. Take your cult. Take over Spalding, California. Okay, I want to make quick mention of another one that I mentioned in a recent video, and that's Kenton, Oklahoma. This is located in the far west end of the Panhandle, right near the tri-state point with New Mexico and Colorado. There are about 30 people that live in this town. It's already mostly a ghost town. It's been losing population since 1950, and even the entire county of Cimarron County only has 4,500 people. This is right near Black Mesa, which is the high point for Oklahoma at almost 5,000 feet. And this is a pretty area, some subtle beauty, and it's very desolate. For a very long time, this part of the state was known as no man's land, and they weren't kidding. And this is relatively close to Guthrie, Texas, mentioned earlier. So you can pick many towns in this part of the country, the Texas or Oklahoma Panhandle, southwest Kansas. Just many of these Dust Bowl type towns of 100 years ago are still dying to this day. There's already a little shop and museum there trying to preserve some of the history, so you got to move your cult there soon before they turn this place into a state park. And the last one I want to mention is the biggest one that might become a ghost town in the future, and that's Cairo, Illinois. This is the southernmost city in the state, located right at the tri-state point with Missouri and Kentucky at the confluence of the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. And this town has 1,700 people, which is a huge city for this video, but there were 14,000 in 1940. And not only does the population continue to decline, it's declining now faster than ever. And because of that, there's a lot of infrastructure in this town. Think about the road network and things you would need utilities-wise to have a town of 14,000 people. So for it to have just barely 10% of that, you can imagine most of the town is unused but still built up. You have a historic downtown with some nice old buildings but not much money to preserve them. And it's very surreal to be driving around this town, you're right, in the heart of the CBD of a town that again had 14,000 people 80 years ago, but now it's mostly just been cleared. So if you move your cult here, you already have a large space to work with, a lot of open land. You have roads. There's still a nice courthouse and customs house there. So there's a lot working for you there. There's a lot of opportunity and a great chance of being flooded. All there in Cairo, Illinois. So that was my look at a handful of dying towns in the U.S. that might very well become completely abandoned and ghost towns in the next 20, 30 years if you don't take your cult there. So there are certainly many more towns like this, and I can cover. There could be a whole channel devoted to stuff like this, but these are just some of the more interesting ones I think are going on right now. But if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up to let me know you approve, and subscribe to this channel if you're interested in learning more about geography from a nerd. But yeah, thanks for watching. Geography King signing out. I'd like to give a special thanks to my Superior patrons for their support. If you're interested in becoming a Superior patron or perhaps an Erie or Huron patron, check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description. As always, thank you very much.